The slap echoed across Lenox Avenue like a gunshot. September 14th, 1931, 2:47 p.m. Officer Patrick O'Reilly's hand connected with the face of Margaret Johnson, a 58-year-old woman walking home from Abyssinian Baptist Church. The sound cut through the afternoon air, sharp, violent, deliberate. Vendors stopped selling, musicians stopped playing, children froze mid-run, conversations died mid-sentence. 200 people watched a white cop humiliate a black mother in broad daylight. Margaret Johnson, a woman in a Sunday dress carrying a Bible, had done nothing except exist on a sidewalk that O'Reilly considered his personal kingdom, and standing 6 feet away, her son, Bumpy Johnson, did nothing. He didn't swing, he didn't shout, he just stood there, fists clenched, jaw locked, eyes cold, empty, staring into a well with no bottom. Witnesses would later say they had never seen eyes like his. And O'Reilly? He laughed, booming, arrogant, echoing off the brownstones. He twirled his nightstick, adjusted his cap, and looked directly at Bumpy. "What are you going to do about it, boy? Call the police?" he mocked. Then he walked away, slow, casual, like a man who owned the world. But O'Reilly had no idea. He had 72 hours left to live. The street remained still, the air thick with tension. People whispered to each other, yet no one moved. No one dared challenge the cop. Not that day, not in Harlem. And Bumpy. He stood silent, calculating, the fury inside him hidden behind a mask of control, the kind of control that would change O'Reilly's life forever. To understand what happened next, you need to know Patrick O'Reilly. He wasn't just any cop. He was the 28th Precinct's muscle, the enforcer, the man they sent when they wanted someone hurt, not arrested. 11 years on the force, a reputation that made grown men cross the street, the kind of man you didn't look at, the kind of man who made Harlem fear every step he took. O'Reilly collected protection money from black-owned businesses, shook down numbers runners, and beat men into Harlem Hospital without any consequence. Why? Because he had friends. His captain was his wife's cousin. Local politicians played poker with him every Thursday night. Even the Irish mob protected him. He walked through Harlem like a king, nightstick swinging, badge gleaming, untouchable. Everyone knew he was the law, and everyone feared he was also the punishment. That Tuesday, he was in a foul mood, lost a bet on a boxing match the night before, drunk at roll call, chewed out by his captain, and now an elderly black woman, walking too slow in his path, Margaret Johnson, 58 years old, born in Charleston, South Carolina in 1873, 8 years after the Civil War ended. She'd survived Jim Crow, survived poverty, raised Bumpy through impossible odds, and learned to keep her head down around white authority. So when O'Reilly barked at her to move, she said, "Yes, sir," and tried to step aside. But she wasn't fast enough. And then, the slap. The sound cut through Harlem like lightning. Sharp, violent, deliberate. And just like that, everything changed. The day that should have been ordinary became the day Harlem would never forget. Bumpy Johnson was 24. 2 prison terms under his belt. A man who ran numbers, protected businesses, feared in Harlem. But on Lenox Avenue that afternoon, he wasn't a gangster. He wasn't a king. He was just a son, helpless, frozen, trapped by the same impossible math that trapped every black man in America. Fight back against a white cop and die. Stand there and witness humiliation. O'Reilly had a gun, a badge, the entire police department behind him. The newspapers wouldn't even question it. So Bumpy clenched his fists so tight, his knuckles white, jaw locked, breathing shallow. He stood while his mother touched her face, stood while O'Reilly laughed, stood while 200 people watched him fail to protect the woman who had protected him his entire life. Then O'Reilly taunted him, "You coloreds are all the same, tough when stealing from each other, but put a real man in front of you, you remember your place." He spat on the sidewalks and walked away, slow, casual, like a man who owned the world. Bumpy didn't respond, didn't shout, didn't make a move, just walked his mother home, in silence. But everyone on Lenox Avenue knew that silence was more terrifying than any gun, more terrifying than any threat, because it was cold, calculated, and deadly in its promise. People whispered to each other, the air thick with tension. Harlem understood. Bumpy's restraint wasn't weakness, it was a warning that the storm would come, and when it did, there would be no doubt, no question, no escape. O'Reilly would soon learn. Respect wasn't given, it was enforced, and Bumpy Johnson, he knew exactly how to make sure it was paid. Over the next 72 hours, Bumpy didn't act rashly. He didn't let anger make him stupid. He thought, he planned. Hours 1 to 12. He made phone calls, not to criminals, not to his associates, but to people invisible to O'Reilly, porters, waiters, janitors, people who saw everything because nobody paid attention to them. Within 6 hours, Bumpy knew O'Reilly's complete routine. Where he lived, his Upper West Side apartment. Where he drank, Moseley's Ale House. What time he started work, 6 a.m. What time he ended, 2 p.m. When he was alone and vulnerable. Hours 12 to 24. Bumpy studied O'Reilly's connections, the cousin captain, the alderman, the Irish mob, who protected him, who made him untouchable. This wasn't revenge anymore. This was a message, a lesson, one that would echo through every precinct in New York. And Bumpy didn't have to be near him to make it land. Just the knowledge, the precision, the inevitability of what was coming. That was enough to start the cracks in O'Reilly's mind. Hours 24 to 48. O'Reilly started noticing things. Faces he'd seen once in one part of town, now popping up somewhere else. A man reading a newspaper at the bar, not drinking. A car following him for 3 blocks, then disappearing. His instincts screamed paranoia, but he laughed it off. Nobody's dumb enough to come after a cop, he told himself, not knowing. The storm was already surrounding him, and he couldn't see it. Hour 48 to 72. O'Reilly's captain called him in. "Patrick, I'm hearing things. That incident uptown. The mother, her son is Bumpy Johnson." O'Reilly shrugged. "So what? I slapped her. She was blocking the sidewalk. What's Johnson going to do? Cry about it?" The captain's face darkened. "Take a few days." O'Reilly never made it to the subway. What happened in those 4 blocks? Nobody knows. No witnesses, no struggle, no gunshots, no screams, just gone. For 72 hours. Officer Patrick O'Reilly vanished, Harlem whispered. The streets held their breath. Everyone wondered, what kind of power could take a man like him and make him disappear? Friday morning, 6:47 a.m., Officer Thomas Murphy arrived at the 28th precinct. Walking up the front steps, he froze. A man, tied to the iron railing, naked except for his underwear, shivering, not from the cold, but from terror. His body covered in bruises, not the kind that kill you, but the kind that break something deeper. His eyes, glassy, empty, staring at nothing, and pinned to his chest, right over his heart. A handwritten note, neat letters. "Respect mothers." Murphy stepped closer, stomach turning. It was Patrick O'Reilly, but not the man he had known. This was a man, psychologically destroyed, broken beyond comprehension. Murphy tried to untie him. Patrick, what happened? Who did this? Where were you?" O'Reilly's head turned slowly, his lips trembling, and the only words he spoke, over and over. I'm sorry. No explanation, no name, just those words. For the rest of his life, those words would be all he could say. The NYPD was stunned, the precinct in chaos. The enforcer, the untouchable, reduced to a whisper of remorse. The city went into panic. Raids, interrogations, offers of immunity, bribes, questioning every known criminal, everyone from Harlem to Brooklyn. Nothing. Nobody spoke. Nobody knew. 200 witnesses from Lenox Avenue. Every single one asked, and every single one said the same thing. "I don't remember seeing anything unusual." Forensic evidence? Non-existent? No fingerprints? No fibers? No traces of what had happened in those 72 hours? Bumpy Johnson? Officially innocent. Unofficially. Everyone in Harlem and the precinct knew. The lesson had been delivered, without a single shot fired. without a drop of blood, but a mind shattered. O'Reilly never returned to duty, medically retired. December 1931, pension, psychiatric care. Nothing healed him. His wife left. Friends abandoned him. He became a ghost, technically alive, but not living. Every hospital, every institution, he muttered the same two words, "I'm sorry," to nurses, to doctors, to the walls, to himself, for 37 years, until his death in 1968. The words never changed. The NYPD got the message: fear, respect, lines not to be crossed, mothers, sacred, power, measured not in bullets, but in precision, in patience, in the quiet, cold certainty of Bumpy Johnson. O'Reilly never returned to duty. Medically retired, psychiatric care, but nothing worked. Friends gone, family gone, alive, but not living. His empty desk at the 28th precinct became a daily reminder. You can survive a bullet, but not what Bumpy Johnson does to your mind. The precinct changed. Cops still collected their protection money, still shook down businesses, but the casual brutality stopped. No more slaps, no more arrogant laughter at the expense of Harlem's people. Everyone knew disrespect came with consequences, and Bumpy Johnson was the measure. In Harlem, they tell this story not to scare children, but to teach respect. Some lines cannot be crossed. Mothers are sacred. Badges don't make you invincible. And Bumpy, he went back to protecting Harlem, running his operations, enforcing his code, being the king he was meant to be. Respect mothers, or spend the rest of your life apologizing. That was the message, clear, precise, unforgettable. And it echoed through every block, every precinct, every whisper in Harlem. Because Bumpy Johnson didn't just punish, he taught, he commanded. He delivered justice that no law could touch. Officer O'Reilly thought he could slap a black woman in broad daylight and walk away laughing. He was wrong. 72 hours later, he was found naked, insane, apologizing for the rest of his life. And Bumpy Johnson, he went back to protecting Harlem, because that's what kings do. They protect their people, they punish disrespect, and they make sure the lesson is never forgotten. Every glance at an empty desk, every whisper on the street, reminded everyone, power is quiet, calculated, precise, and deadly in its restraint. If this story hit different, even you know what to do. Smash that subscribe button. We're telling Bumpy Johnson stories the history books won't touch. The brilliance, the strategy, the code. Drop a comment below. What do you think happened in those 72 hours? Would you rather die or end up like O'Reilly? Hit the bell, because next week we're diving into the time Bumpy walked into Lucy Luciano's office unarmed and walked out as an equal. You won't want to miss that. Remember, Harlem didn't need superheroes. They had Bumpy Johnson.